Welcome, everyone. It's the 28th of January, and welcome to everyone here and at home. First up is the public forum. The public forum is an opportunity for individuals to speak to the City Council on any city-related issues, except for those items that have already been heard by a hearings official or are on tonight's agenda as a public hearing. Each person will have 3 minutes to speak. When you come to the podium, please give your name, the city of residence, and for Eugene residents, your ward if you know it. The timer and lights indicate the time you have to speak. The red light indicates the end of 3 minutes and the end of your turn. And we have 7 people signed up tonight. Wow. Okay, first up is Joe Tyndall, followed by Rosemary Eason.
Hi, good evening. My name's Joe Tyndall, and first,
see if you can get it right up close to your mouth.
Right up close. We're not loud enough yet.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Piercy, for intervening so Allie Valkyrie can attend this meeting, although I don't see her here at the moment. For some of you, Allie is a troublemaker. Without her standing up for the homeless, the police could bully them even harder, possibly ridding our city of this plague. Why should we coddle these undesirables? They made their choices. Let's round them up and burn them at the stake. Oh, how I long for the good old days. To justify inequality, the wealthy have sold us the doctrine of free will. You chose to be poor just as I chose to be rich. If you made better decisions, you could be rich like me. Under such logic, free will must function absolutely. If this is not the case, then being born wealthy does confer an advantage, and the rich do share in the blame for creating poverty, addiction, gangs, and homelessness. Sadly, free will is limited. Addiction and its consequences are the product of family stress, often economic, passed down through the generations. If kids emerge from their early years carrying the trauma from neglect, beating, molestations, addicted parents, and so on, does this set them up for failure at school? Does failure at school set them up for poverty, gangs, addiction, and homelessness? As Allie sees it, the homeless are simply being further punished for already having been abused in their formative years. Our system scapegoats these people. Allie advocates for them. She should be getting a paycheck for this work. At the gang symposium, Detective Greg Harvey told us that punishment has not solved the gang problem and likely makes it worse. Similarly, punishment cannot end drug addiction or homelessness. As rational policymaker, would you swap 2% of our police budget to obtain a 10% reduction in crime? Those are the numbers. Allie Valkyrie's question is, why has this not already been done? For further insight, I recommend In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts. It examines the scientific and experiential wisdom regarding the causes and successful solutions for addiction and, by extension, for poverty, homelessness, and gangs. Our war on gangs, drugs, and the homeless have failed. Punishment only reinforces the belief that the system is stacked against these people. Mistreatment breeds hostility. Desperation coupled with the will to survive breeds crime. Allie Valkyrie gets it. Thank you.
Next up is Rosemary Eason, followed by Zachary Vishanoff.
Hi, my name is Rosemary Eason, and I live in Eugene. Villa Gillespie. Anyhow, I applaud the council for taking into consideration and listening to the complaints of the proposed city service and stormwater fees. I applaud the courage to take the situation to the voters. However, I'm frustrated over who will actually pay these fees, taxes, whatever you want to call them. It is suggested that low-income Section 8 residents be exempt. On the other end of the spectrum, the City Council gave $880,000 annual tax waiver to Capstone and is considering another waiver to Core Campus for $440,000. That's over $1.3 million annually lost to the city. The reduction of libraries, parks, and public pools would be a shame, but I am far more concerned with the crisis in our public safety system. It is frightening to know that if I am a victim of a crime, my perpetrator will spend less time in jail than the officer writing the report. that person will most likely not be prosecuted, and they will most likely be right back at the revolving door. We seem to be a safe haven for the downtrodden and the criminal elements in society. The Lane County Commissioners have been nervously delaying the decision to put a tax of 50 cents on $1,000 of assessed value to support the failing public safety system. They missed last year's election due in part to the concern of it conflicting with the ballot measure relating to the Springfield jail. And now the county commissioners are embroiled in the proposal of a double-digit pay raises for two of their high-profile employees. The Eugene City Council, on the other hand, brazenly proposed two $120 fees, one of which was not subject to voter approval. So what did all this cause? A feeling of anger, distrust, frustration, and a voter base that will say no to everything and everyone. In the end, I feel everybody loses.
Zachary Vishanoff is next, followed by Paul Cawthorn.
Zach Vishnoff. I'd like to respond to a couple things I heard in the earlier session. Claire was talking about parks and how they are maybe in a dilapidated kind of state. I think if she took a little closer look at what's going on at parks, is certain parks are being chosen as special parks and are getting like $1 zillion facility, and those are near other neighborhoods that with parks that are being let to rot and fall off the map. So there's politics involved. If the priorities were set at the Parks Department, then there might be enough to ensure a basic level of service on all of them. But we're playing favorites with certain parks, and it seems like certain firms are getting the work too. So it's more complicated than all the poor parks are starving for funds. So, and if you have questions about that, you can just see how $700,000 mysteriously just appeared for one of the projects to go forward under the Jefferson Street Bridge, and I think that's a positive project, but it's a dubious methodology involved. I'd like to welcome Councilor Evans, and maybe he's been here a while, but I wasn't aware of it, and I think his logic is really a wonderful thing to have at the table. He and Mike Clark, I think, are really kind of based in reality on some of these tax issues, along with Councilor Taylor, and I think when they're ignored, and it's just this 2-5 vote keeps happening, I think you're all headed for real trouble, because they are just using common sense, and I think they've just been out in the community talking more directly with people to have more of an idea of what's actually going on and people's ability to cover some of these ideas. Lastly, on finding efficiencies in public safety, the two hearings I've been requesting you have regarding DPS changing to the U of O police department. It's like a basketball game. Okay, it was about at 30 seconds. So, by not having two advertised hearings about that, you're letting the university duplicate city services and over deploy, and it's a redundant competition of the two entities. So if you're really serious about public safety, okay, chill. Anyway, I'll try that again, I guess, in 2 weeks. Bye.
Paul Cawthorn is next, followed by Dennis Cassidy.
Hello, I'm Paul Cawthorn, living in Eugene, Oregon, and Alan Slinka's ward. And we have a lot of laws on the books already, and a lot of laws aren't enforced, and that leads to problems and leads to neighborhood unrest, and neighbors being unhappy with the situation. And if those laws were enforced, we wouldn't be having to have this conversation about the social host ordinance. This social host ordinance is just a duplication of laws we have. You may vote for it or you may not vote for it, but it won't change the behavior of individuals. And we need to look at solutions that will actually change those behaviors. And I think the main way we could address this is by getting the University of Oregon to hold their students responsible. And they've not wanted to do that because this or that or the other, or money or whatever. But they are the ones that can make a difference in this and help the community. And just making another law isn't going to do anything. Thank you.
Dennis Cassidy is next, followed by Mary Salinas.
My name's Dennis Cassidy. I live in Ward 2. I'm talking or speaking in regards to the social host ordinance also. I attended probably half of the meetings in the discussion of the social host ordinance. At the very last meeting, there were unanswered questions, and no one present appeared to be in consensus or on the same page. No one was in agreement. I'm of the firm belief that landlords or property managers are not to blame and therefore should not be held responsible for tenants' or renters' actions. Everyone is free to make their own choices, and in so doing should take responsibility for their own actions. I'm not responsible for anyone's actions other than my own. There are enough laws already on the books to address unruly parties without going after the landlords. Thank you.
Mary Salinas is next, followed by Sean Nugent.
Hello, my name is Mary Salinas. I'm a spokesperson for the homeless. I've been begging for help for years now. You all know me very well, except Mr. Evans. I didn't expect to speak tonight. I came here to find Conrad Barney, the young man who's doing the hunger strike. I haven't been able to find him. He would be in a critical stage at this point. His body is breaking down now. I don't know where he is. I don't know how far he intends to take it. And then Sweet Pea was kicked to death this week. I've known so many homeless people kicked to death. And one night, I lived downtown. In the middle of the night, a man was wailing in the dark, in the rain, wailing. And I feel like I'm in a Dostoevsky novel. The social hostess ordinance. Students drinking, what will you do about that? You promote alcoholism. You promote the alcohol industry. You're so happy for money and jobs. The university newspapers promote alcohol. Even the commentator loves alcohol. It's Dostoevsky, it's schizophrenia happening here tonight. You promote it, and you punish us. You let the homeless die because they're, quote, alcoholics. It's the biggest complaint. It's the biggest problem in our society, alcoholism. And the ones at the bottom are allowed to sink into what you call a safe haven. I'm distraught. I can't seem to stand to watch it anymore and hear it in the night. People screaming, cussing in the middle of the night downtown. You can't get renters because of the violence downtown. People going crazy in your horrible rain. I was homeless in Colorado. The snow is dry. It's much easier there. Even if it's zero, it's easier than here. This is horrible. The rain is horrific. People walking around with their sleeping bags slung over their bodies, hoping they'll dry out a little bit. If your sleeping bag gets wet, it stays wet for weeks. Can you imagine sleeping in a wet sleeping bag in that terrible weather? And the police chasing you out from under the bridges, harassing you and being horrible to you. I'm sorry. Please help us. And please understand the youth whom you are hurting.
Last up is Sean Nugent. Sean? Guess he's not here. All right. All right. So we're going to close the public hearing and thank everyone for coming this evening. Ask council if anybody has any comments they want to make. See any? We'll move on now to the consent calendar. Council President.
I move to approve the items on the consent calendar.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Seeing none. All those in favor, please indicate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and none in opposition. It passes. Thank you. Item number 3 is an ordinance concerning unruly gatherings. The manager.
Thank you, Mayor. This proposed ordinance addresses neighborhood livability issues arising from unruly gatherings throughout the city and reflects changes proposed to address concerns raised at the public hearing in November 2012. The changes include eliminating littering from the offenses that define an unruly gathering, outlining conditions to be considered in an appeal arising from a citation to a multi-unit property owner, adding community service as a possible penalty to be considered by the court, and increasing the number of attendees at a party from 6 to 10 before the party is defined as unruly. These changes are proposed to respond to specific comments that arose at the public hearing and are offered as an option for the City Council to consider.
Thank you, City Manager. Council President, you want to put the motion on the table?
Certainly. I move to adopt Council Bill 5081, an ordinance concerning unruly gatherings.
Second.
Moved and seconded. I see before us we have several motions. Councilor Taylor, you have a motion?
Yes. I move to amend the penalty in Section 4.990 for a violation of Section 4.6721 by deleting the words, "fine not to exceed $1,000 or community service as determined by the court, which may include restorative justice or both," and inserting the words, $100 fine or community service as determined by the court, which may include restorative justice or both for first offense, $200 fine for second offense occurring within a 12-month period, $500 fine for third and subsequent offenses.
Is there a second? I see one.
I'll second.
All right, moved and seconded.
Thank you. And I may speak for it now. I think that Joe Tyndall was speaking very eloquently about poverty and about how people, once you're in poverty, everything makes you more poor. And some students are poor. I know some people think they're all rich, but some students are barely getting by. And I think that if we're going to penalize them, there should be things that won't, the penalty should be small enough that they won't force someone to leave school. And I know that some people are barely getting by, barely able to eat and pay tuition and buy books. And I think that a $100 fine may not be much to some people, but to a poor student, it's a big thing. I think that if we make the first offense a maximum of $100 or community service, that is possible and enough to warn someone not to do whatever it was again. And a $1,000 fine to people who are wealthy, it's probably nothing, but to people who are barely getting by, it is huge. Thank you.
Any other comments? Councilor Brown?
I'd just like to comment to that. Your language, I mean, the fine will not exceed, I mean, it's not to exceed 1,000. I can't say this for certain, but I would just be stunned if a judge chose to lay a $1,000 fine on a first offense. and not for, especially for a young person, to not offer them the chance of restorative justice, community service. It's up to the judge, and what I've seen of our municipal court, our judges are very fair, and so I think I understand your intent, but I can't support this.
Councilor Clark and then Councilor Zelenka.
Thank you, Mayor. I just had a comment about this ordinance in general, and it seems to fit here better than any other. I see several representatives that are good friends with the university here, and I would say that I know that when we talk about the disturbances and louder parties around the University of Oregon neighborhood areas, certainly not all the folks involved in that are university students, and we know that. But for those that are, I think that a more effective deterrent to those type of parties, which, and we brought this up because of the $80,000-$90,000 it cost the city last year to respond to those, I think a more effective deterrent is their status with the university. And I know that several folks are working on this, and certainly the university's been very responsive. But I'd like to see them work harder as well with regard to student conduct code work that would make this a more effective deterrent to the student when their status as a student is in jeopardy from their behavior. Thank you.
I think it was Councilor Zelenka.
Yeah, I agree with Councilor Clark on the student code of conduct. That needs to be modified, but that's a University of Oregon issue, and unfortunately we don't get to play in that arena. But more than happy to work with the university to work on that issue. I know it's a long-standing issue that's been worked on for many, many years, but I think it's time and right for some changes to it. As to the specific motion here, didn't Mr. City Manager, didn't we originally have a stair-stepped fine in the proposal, and the judge said that's fine, City Council, but I set the fees, something like that?
When council discussed this last fall, there was you expressed a desire for tiered penalties, first, second, third offense. The difficulty with that is that the officers who cite partygoers for this offense can't check the records at that time as they're writing the citation to know whether or not there's been a prior conviction. So they can only cite for unruly gathering, and when they write the citation, they enter a presumptive fine. That's basically the bail amount. That's the amount you can pay without having to appear in court. What Judge Allen told us at one of the council work sessions is that he will set the presumptive fine. And although he didn't commit to a particular number, I think the staff report for tonight points out that on the other offense in the city code, where the code provides for a maximum fine of $1,000, the presumptive fine in that case for a first offense is $375. If a person goes to court, usually the fine turns out to be less than the presumptive fine amount. That's just the bail amount. So if you go to court, typically the fine on a first offense is going to be less than that. The $1,000 fine is simply the maximum that the municipal court could impose, and typically that would not happen unless either there were a number of offenses beforehand or it was a particularly aggravating circumstance.
And essentially, Sergeant Nat, did you want to add something?
Okay, just in case. You don't have to
just
say
in case.
I think Jerry's got that correct. The $1,000 is a max fine. It doesn't talk to the stair-step approach that the court typically takes. If you look at any other ordinance in the city that has a fine associated with it, on the criminal side, it's going to have a maximum fine, and then the courts create the judges amongst the court creates that stair-step level.
Yeah, and when we had Judge Allen in front of us, I guess he said essentially that same thing, that he would stair-step that up. And then the change that we made to this is to add in the community service as as an alternative as well as restorative justice. We don't have a restorative justice system, so if we do get one, that could take place. But and that allows for the judge to take into consideration people's circumstance in that particular case. As to the top end of the fine at $500, I think a noise violation, Jerry, do you know specifically, or Sergeant, is around $300 and something.
Base fine, I don't have my base fine schedule on me, but I think it's much more significant. The base fine that we write on the citation, again, when we write a citation, it's a base fine assigned by the court. It's not what the person's going to end up paying. The court's going to adjudicate it. The base fines are assigned by the judiciary in the municipal court, and I don't have prohibited noise off the top of my head.
$375.
So if on a second call, it would double.
Right, and someone in my neighborhood actually got one of those, and that was the last time that was a noisy house, so it actually worked. What this is intended to do at the top end at $1,000 is to get the people that have got those $375 tickets over and over and over again. By the time the fourth time rolls around, if they haven't figured this out, I don't have a lot of sympathy for a $1,000 fine. I mean, the point of the $1,000 fine is to work your way up, not work your way up the scale to get to there. It's supposed to be a deterrent, and I think it would be, and I would hope it would be. So I'm in favor of having that be the max with the changes of community service, restorative justice, and what Judge Allen said about the escalated fine is his intent when he rules on these cases.
Councilor Surratt?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So I seconded this motion not because I had strong feelings about the fine schedule, but because I thought it was important that we talk about it, because it was one of the issues that was raised particularly by the students who came to speak to us, and we didn't really talk about it that much. Plus, as a newer council member, a lot of this discussion happened before I was on council, before Councilor Evans was here. So not that we want to rehash everything, but I think there's some value in hearing how the fines are issued and how that interacts with the municipal court, and also what the relative fines are for some related offenses like the noise ordinance. So this has been, for me, a very helpful conversation, and I would support, even if we were in a position to do more of a tiered fine, I would want the third offense to be higher than $500 even with this motion. So I appreciate the dialogue. Thank you.
We're ready to vote on this? All those in favor of Councilor Taylor's motion? One. In opposition? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It goes down. We're back to the main motion. Councilor Colling.
Thank you. On the 25th, I sent out an email to my fellow councilors advising that I was going to intended to make 2 amendments to the ordinance, and that, to me, it was based on the response that we were getting from the public on the proposed changes from the original work done by the group, as well as the original work done by the group. Since then, Councilor Zelinka put out an email virtually the same thing except for the part about the number of persons. I was willing to change the wording on the unruly gatherings from 10 or more persons back to 5, more than 5 persons. But when Councilor Zelinka sent out his email, I was perfectly all right to back that proposed amendment, because it's not necessarily the number of people that we're looking at, it's the activity. And for an officer to have to go to a house at an unruly party and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then somebody goes out the back door, you just walk away and leave it. So I don't think that there should be a number at all on that. So I will move to amend the original motion. I move to amend the definition of unruly gathering in section, thank you, 4.670 by deleting the phrase of 10 or more persons. And 2, I move, or shall I make that an additional? We'll just go on that one, and then we'll make an additional amendment.
There's a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. You've already spoken to it. Councilor Evans.
Yeah, I want to speak to the motion. Having professional experience with this for 17 years with unruly students, I can tell you, for one, that one student can produce his own riot. And I've had to deal with some of those issues before, more often than I like to. So I think that Councilor Polling's amendment to this, which is consistent with Councilor Zelenka's proposed motion that he had put out in the email and what we have before us, I think is appropriate, and I think that I think that we should just basically deal with what reality is. Nobody should be counting how many people are at a party or in the middle of the street or doing things that they shouldn't be doing.
I guess the only caveat that Jerry said is that it doesn't constitute a gathering if you're one.
Depends on Mayor.
One, really.
Mayor, you haven't seen the students that I've seen. That.
Yes, Councilor Zelenka.
Yeah, appreciate Councilor Polling putting this forward. I also had the same exact amendment. This issue has long history to it. It's a long-standing problem in my part of town and other parts of town. In my particular area, this is the first time and I've lived there for 25 plus years, that people are actually moving out of that neighborhood around the university because of the ongoing problems, including these recurring party houses, and struggling with how to deal with these issues. And so we've had lots of public input from students, from the public, and public hearings, and this is a very important issue. And to me, on this particular motion, it's not about the number of people. Whatever number we pick is going to be arbitrary, and then we're going to have this counting issue. And I want to avoid that. It's not about the number of people, it's about the behaviors. So if the behaviors that are enumerated in this code are being violated, it doesn't really matter to me how many people are there, whether it be 25 or 50 or 10 or 9. So that's why I propose this motion. And numerous other cities that have these kinds of social host ordinances actually are silent on this issue. So we're in good company. So I'll support the motion.
Need to vote on this? All right. All those in favor of Councilor Polling's motion, please indicate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and none in opposition. It passes. The next motion.
The second one I'd like to amend, I move to amend section 4.670 to add a new subsection J to read as follows. J, littering as defined in section 6.805 of this code by a person who attended the party or gathering.
Need a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All right. Any comments or questions? Councilor Zelenka.
Yeah, having lived around the university for a long time, this is no small issue.
Right.
It is actually a very big issue. Littering in itself, throwing down a piece of paper and getting a violation for it, isn't what we're talking about here. This is about coming out of your door in the morning on Sunday and having beer bottles and those red cups not only on your lawn but all over the neighborhood, and broken beer bottles on the street and on the sidewalks. Taking my dog out for a walk and having to go the other way or cross the street because he can't pass the sidewalk because there's so many broken bottles on the street or the sidewalk. And so this has become a really big issue. It's Adrix likes to call them the unofficial flower of the Western University neighborhood is the little red cup, and he says that in partly in jest, but in part it's based in reality. So this is one of the things that is a quality of life issue that I think we really need to address and have be part of this code. So I'll be supporting the amendment, and in fact I proposed the exact same amendment.
Councilor Taylor.
I wonder if this means it says the person who attended the party. So if someone goes down the street and drops something and says, I've been at a party at someone's house, then can you go back to that house and cite that person for littering?
She's asking the question.
With the
I think it's a predicating offense to, of the two offenses that law enforcement is going to have to issue the social host violation. I think if you add it to J, you're adding it as a predicating offense. So if we come upon a gathering or have been dispatched to a gathering and the officers witness somebody dropping a cup as they leave the location and we contact that person, they're also MIP, there are two predicating offenses to cite the host of that unruly gathering with all the other reasonable suspicion that's outlined in the ordinance. So it's a predicating offense. So if they're a block away and they litter, we're not going to necessarily tie that back, or 2 blocks away. We're not going to tie that back to where they had come from. If it's something that's occurring coming out of the gathering and we're right there at the gathering, I think the courts are going to expect us to be reasonable in our application of the predicating offenses.
Mayor?
I still have reservations because I know that being a host doesn't mean you can control who comes to your party. And when you say that the host gets fined.
Jerry, did you have something you wanted to say?
I was just going to add that the 2 offenses have to occur on the property where the unruly gathering occurs or on adjacent property. So if it's a block away, it would not be tied to the party at all. Even if a person left the party with a cup of beer and dropped it a block away, that wouldn't fit in as one of the predicate offenses.
Okay, well, I know that people go to parties they're not invited to. And I do have concerns about that. I also wonder if we could do similar things, or whatever we say, it's directed at students, but I wonder if we could do similar things for people who have fireworks that keep people up all night and endanger the neighborhood because they could cause fires. Would this ordinance apply to things like that? That's not a party necessarily. Well, it is a party when they have a group of people doing fireworks.
The unlawful fireworks in itself would be a code violation, just as any of the things are in this list that you're looking at where you're considering adding littering. But the social host ordinance, what's different about it is that besides those underlying offenses, after there are 4 offenses, then the property owner also becomes civilly liable for a penalty. In addition to the other things about the host and the actors at the party. So.
Thank you.
You're finished.
I would like to point out that, as Councilor Zelenka said, this is about the behavior, and that not all of the people who attend these parties are students of the university. Some of them are students at my college. Some of them are students from high school who shouldn't be there in the first place. But there are also a lot of people who have no affiliation with any school or any academic institution whatsoever, and they have they're the source of a lot of this negative and illegal activity. So I think that focusing on the behavior is the critical issue here, and not to look at this as being a college student problem per se. Having been a college student 30 years ago, I would have never thought of being in this kind of situation. No.
All right, I think we're ready to vote.
Well, I'd like to show Councilor Evans some video.
We didn't have video in the 80s.
Free video.
Yeah, some film.
Okay. All those in favor of this motion, please indicate.
Amendment.
I mean the motion. Okay, 8 in favor and none in opposition. It passes. Now we're yes.
Under the main motion. On the main motion.
That's right.
Okay.
As amended.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Well, there was some there were portions of this that I did not prepare an amendment for, that I didn't have after a great deal of conversation, and I know many people worked on, with regard to the tenants of multiple unit complexes that I would say are still not at their ultimate or best possible outcome for this ordinance. I intend to vote for it and support it, although I know that there are parts of it that could probably still be sharpened and made better. I think that on the whole, this addresses the problem well and does a good job, and I know that Sergeant Nat and many others worked very hard on this. I'm going to support it, but I welcome those who think that portions of it are not yet fully refined to get in contact, and I think there is opportunity to yet refine pieces of this even after we pass this part. So,
Ready to vote on this motion as amended. All those in favor, please indicate. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It passes. None in opposition. So done. On to item 4, which is an ordinance providing for withdrawal of annexed property. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. The purpose of the ordinance is to remove annexed properties from the tax rolls of special service districts, which in this case are the River Road Park and Recreation District and the River Road Water District. Annexation of these properties was approved by the City Council in 2012 at the request of the property owners. The city is now providing urban services to these properties. However, they remain on the tax rolls of special service districts until withdrawn. These withdrawals come before the council on an annual basis. This year, the batch contains the 3 annexations approved in 2012 for a total of 5 tax lots.
Motion on the table.
Yes, I move to adopt Council Bill 5085, an ordinance withdrawing annexed properties from the River Road Park and Recreation District and the River Road Water District.
second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? None. All those in favor, please indicate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. None in opposition. It passes. And with that, we are through with the business of the evening. Thank you all very much.